The printer kept jamming. Of course it did. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't line the paper up. And through the thin wall of the church office, I could hear Glenda's voice, my sister-in-law's voice, telling 40 people in folding chairs what kind of woman I was. She hit him. She's been hitting him for years. He just couldn't bring himself to say it. The printer spat out another crooked page. I had 9 minutes before my father-in-law and sister-in-law tormented me at home and spread vicious lies about me. So I made sure the truth spoke louder. Hey everyone, I'm Corinne. Corey to most people. I'm 31, I teach 4th grade, and I have one of those faces that apparently looks guilty no matter what I'm doing, which, spoiler alert, becomes relevant. I married my husband Theo when I was 26. He was a soft-spoken guy, an accountant, the kind who apologizes to furniture he bumps into. His dad, Ronan, was a retired contractor who'd built half the houses on their road himself. His sister, Glenda, was a stay-at-home mom to 3 kids and ran the family newsletter. Yes, a literal printed newsletter. That detail matters later. We moved in with Ronan about 8 months after the wedding. Theo's mom had passed when he was a teenager. Ronan had been rattling around that big house alone, and his knees were getting bad. Theo pitched it as temporary. 6 months, Corey, a year tops. I said yes because I loved him, and because I'd grown up with a single mom in a 1-bedroom, and the idea of a house with a yard felt like winning a small lottery. The first 2 months were nice. Ronan was gruff but polite. He called me kiddo. He made coffee strong enough to strip paint and left a cup for me on the counter every morning before I went to school. Then Glenda started coming over. Glenda lived about 20 minutes away with her husband Dale and their kids. When I moved in, the visits tripled. She'd let herself in with her key at 8 in the morning on a Saturday. She'd rearrange my kitchen. Once, I came home from the grocery store and she'd reorganized my spice rack alphabetically and thrown out 3 jars she'd decided were expired, including a saffron I'd saved 6 months to buy. "Oh, Corey, don't look like that," she said. "I was just helping." "Glenda, that was really expensive." "Well, it smelled funny. You're welcome." Theo was at work. Ronan was in his chair in the den, pretending not to hear. I'd love to tell you I drew a line right then. I didn't. I smiled, I said something about being grateful, and I drove to the store and bought another jar with money we didn't really have. I told myself, she means well. I told myself all the things women tell themselves when they're trying to survive somebody else's behavior. This is the first thing I want to say plain. I've spent a lot of time since then wondering why I kept translating her into a person who meant well. I think when you grow up with very little, you learn to smooth things over before they break, because broken things don't get replaced. I smoothed and smoothed until there was nothing left of me with any texture to it. The lies started small. Glenda would tell Theo things I'd supposedly said. Corey told me she thinks your dad's getting weird in the head. I never said that. Corey mentioned she doesn't want kids for a few more years. I had said no such thing. We just talked the night before about trying in the spring. Theo would bring these up obliquely, hurt, and I'd have to say over and over, I never said that. She's making it up. And Theo, bless him, would nod, and then 3 days later, ask me again. Ronan was different. Ronan didn't lie about me. Ronan just made my life small. He'd turn the TV up when I came in the room. He'd critique dinner. "You use too much garlic. My wife never used garlic like that." Once he came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes and said, "Theo's mother kept this sink a lot cleaner, just so you know." Then he walked out. I started dreading coming home. I'd sit in my car in the driveway for 10, 15 minutes sometimes, just to breathe before I went inside. There was a neighbor across the street, Hollis, a widow in her 70s, who grew tomatoes in pots on her porch. She waved to me every morning. One day, she flagged me down when I was getting the mail. "Honey," she said, low, "you okay in there?" "I'm fine." She looked at me a long time. "You come over for tea whenever you need to. Door's open." I didn't take her up on it for months. I wish I had sooner. Here's where the subplot creeps in. My mom had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer right around the time we moved in. She lived 3 hours away. I was driving back and forth every other weekend to take her to appointments, sit with her through treatments, cook meals she could stomach. I was exhausted. I told Theo everything. I didn't tell Glenda or Ronan anything because I'd learned that private information in that house had a way of coming back to me, warped. Glenda found out anyway. Theo told her, I'm sure. And her response was to say at dinner, in front of Ronan, "Corey, if you need to move back in with your mom for a while, nobody would blame you." "I'm not moving out," I said. "I'm just saying, your mom, that's your first family." "Glenda, I'm not moving out." She smiled the smile of somebody who'd planted a seed and was willing to wait. About 6 months in, things tipped. I came home one Tuesday to find my bedroom rearranged. Glenda had decided the bed flowed better on the opposite wall. She'd gone through my closet. She'd bagged up 4 shirts she'd decided were too tight. She'd read my journal. I know she read it because when I confronted her, she quoted a line back to me. "You wrote that you feel like a ghost in this house. That's a little dramatic, don't you think?" I lost it. I yelled. I told her to get out, to give back her key, to never touch my things again. She stood there, calm as a pond, and let me yell. And when I was done, she said, softly, "Corey, you need help. I'm worried about you." And then she left. And then the story started. Within a week, Theo's cousins were calling him. "Is Corey okay? Glenda said she's been violent." His aunt sent a casserole and a card that said, "Thinking of you during this hard time." Ronan started locking his bedroom door at night. Locking his bedroom door, like I was going to hurt him. I confronted Theo. "Your sister is telling people I'm abusive." "She didn't say that exactly." "What did she say exactly?" He wouldn't answer me. He just kept rubbing his forehead and saying, "Corey, let's not make this bigger." Looking back, I can see how slowly it all moved. Not a shove off a cliff, a slow walk toward the edge, one polite step at a time. And every time I looked up, somebody was telling me I was the one doing the walking. That's the second thing I want to name out loud. Nobody has to push you. They just have to rearrange the room until the only open door is the one they want you to walk through. The breaking point came about a month later. My mom took a bad turn. An infection during treatment, a scary week in the hospital. I left on a Thursday evening after school and drove straight to her. I stayed 4 days. When I came back on Monday night, there was a suitcase by the door. My suitcase. Packed. Theo was sitting at the kitchen table with Ronan and Glenda. "Corey," Theo said, "we think you should stay with your mom for a while." "We," I said. "Who's we?" Ronan spoke up. "This is my house, young lady, and I'm not comfortable with you in it anymore." "Since when?" "Since my daughter told me what's been going on." I looked at Theo. "What's been going on?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. Glenda said, gently, "Corey, we know about the hitting." "The what?" Theo told us. I pulled it out of him. I looked at Theo. "I have never laid a hand on you in my life." "I never said you did," Theo mumbled. "Theo," Glenda said sharply, I didn't, he said louder. Glenda, I didn't say that. I said we fight. I said she yells sometimes. Well, yelling is a form of— Stop, I said. Stop talking. I picked up my suitcase. I walked out. I drove to Hollis's house across the street because I couldn't see straight enough to drive to a hotel. She opened the door in her robe and said, "Oh, honey," and put me in her guest room, and I cried for about 4 hours straight. The next morning, she made me toast and said, "Tell me everything." I did. She listened. And when I was done, she said, "Corinne, I've lived across that street for 41 years. I knew Theo's mother. That woman was a saint, and I watched Ronan treat her like the help. And I watched Glenda learn every trick her daddy had. You are not crazy, and you are not the first woman to come out of that house looking the way you look right now." I want to pause there, because that sentence rearranged something in me. I'd thought I was uniquely failing. It turned out I was just the newest person in an old pattern. That's a grim kind of comfort, but it's comfort. Here's what I did next. I didn't go scorched earth. I went quiet, and I got organized. First, I went to a lawyer, a consultation. I started a folder. Second, I started writing things down. Dates, quotes, the saffron, the journal, the bedroom rearrangement, the specific cousins Glenda had called, and what they'd been told. I called 2 of those cousins myself, the ones I'd actually liked, and I said, calmly, "I want to tell you my side. You don't have to believe me. You just have to hear it." Theo's cousin Marielle said, "Corey, I wondered. I'm so sorry." Third, and this is the part that got loud, Glenda had scheduled a family meeting at the church hall Ronan's family had used for events for 40 years. It was framed as a support gathering for Theo and Ronan, an intervention basically about me. She'd invited 40 people. She'd printed agendas. She'd made a slideshow. Mariella told me. She slipped me the agenda. I went. You don't get to hold a town hall about me without me in the room. I got there an hour early. I had a folder. I had my mom's hospital discharge paperwork proving where I'd been the weekend Glenda claimed I'd disappeared on Theo. Text message screenshots going back 2 years. A statement from Hollis, and, the part I'd been saving, a voicemail. Theo had left it on my phone a week earlier, drunk, at 2 a.m. On it, he said, "Corey, I know you never hit me. I know. Glenda keeps saying it, and I keep not stopping her, and I don't know why. I'm so sorry. I'm such a coward." I had it on a little portable speaker. I'd tested the volume 3 times. I went into the church office to print extra copies. The printer jammed. I could hear Glenda through the wall, warming up the crowd. I finally got the pages out, walked into the hall with my folder, and said, loud enough for the whole room, "Hi, everyone. I'm Theo's wife. I know this meeting is about me. I brought some things." Glenda's face. I will remember Glenda's face for the rest of my life. I handed out the discharge papers first, then the text screenshots, then Hollis's statement, which she'd written in her beautiful old lady cursive and signed. And then, when Glenda started to talk over me, "This is completely inappropriate, Dad. Get her out of here." I pressed play on the voicemail. Theo's voice filled the hall. "I know you never hit me. I know. Glenda keeps saying it, and I keep not stopping her." Theo was in the front row. He put his face in his hands. People started looking at Glenda. Really looking. Mariella stood up and said, "I think we need to hear Corey out." An older uncle I'd barely spoken 2 words to in 5 years said, "Glenda, sit down." Ronan was red in the face and sputtering about his house, his family, his rules, and nobody was listening to him, which I think might have been the first time in his life that had happened. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I said what had happened, calmly. And I said at the end, I'm not asking any of you to take my side. I'm asking you to be careful what you repeat. That's all. Then I walked out. Here's what happened to them. Glenda didn't get hauled off in cuffs. What happened was worse, I think. The family pulled back. Not all at once, but the invitations thinned out. The newsletter got quietly handed off to a cousin. Dale, her husband, had a long conversation with her I was not privy to, but I know they went to counseling, and she got quieter at gatherings. She never apologized to me. I didn't want her to. An apology from Glenda would have been another performance. Ronan had a harder fall. About a year after I moved out, he had a bad fall on the stairs and needed live-in help. Glenda couldn't do it. 3 kids. Theo tried and couldn't hack it. So Ronan ended up in a care facility he hated, and he sold the house he'd built himself to pay for it. Hollis told me he sat on the porch the day the sold sign went up and cried. I didn't feel triumphant about that. Some stories don't need you to dance on them. They finish themselves. Theo and I separated and eventually divorced. He wanted to try. He went to therapy. He wrote me a real letter, handwritten, where he took responsibility for every single time he'd let his sister talk and said nothing. I kept it. I still didn't go back. A man who waits until the damage is done to find his spine isn't a partner. He's a project. And I had already done my time as somebody else's renovation. My mom beat the cancer, by the way. She moved closer to me after the divorce. We got a little duplex, her on one side, me on the other, a door between the 2 kitchens we leave open most of the time. Hollis comes for dinner every other Sunday. She brings tomatoes. This is the last thing I want to say. For a long time, I thought the truth would speak for itself. It won't. People see what they're shown. If you want the truth to speak, sometimes you have to hand it a microphone, print it out, press play on it in a room full of folding chairs. The truth is loud only when somebody is brave enough to turn the volume up. So, has somebody ever told a lie about you that you had to fight your way out of? What did it take to be believed? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit home for you, hit that like button, and if you want more, subscribe and stick around. I'll be here next week. Take care of yourselves, and be careful who you hand your keys to.